Hey guys, welcome back to more family drama stories. In this video, OP's wife literally gambled away their home and it looks like they will end up homeless. Let's dive right into the video. The title story starts like this. Marriage is never easy, that's for sure. There's no such thing as a perfect couple, but even if there was, there is bound to be bumps and trials in the road. Most trials, however, don't include hiding gambling secrets and losing a house. I also never expected for my own marriage to be going through such trials, but life has a funny way of teaching us lessons, I guess. So about a year ago, I married my wife Emily. We had been dating for a few years and to be quite honest, she was the first and only woman I was madly in love with. My wife is not perfect, just like I said, there's no such thing as a perfect couple. I knew before I married her that she was not the best with money. She was definitely one to splurge or to go shopping before her bills were paid. However, she always made it work somehow. She may have asked to borrow a small amount of money here and there, but she always paid it back or always made sure to catch up on bills. Her money spending habits were enough for me to be slightly cautious, but it didn't seem so bad that I couldn't marry her. As a matter of fact, I figured her budgeting and spending would be better in a partnership. Looking back now, I was blinded by love. After we got settled into married life, Emily was the one to handle all of the finances and money. This ended up working out because she spent most of the time at home with our kids and I went to work to provide for us. As these roles set into place, I will admit I was a little nervous. Leaving Emily with the finances as I was away from home working. However, Emily proved me wrong as we got into a good routine and flow and I realized that I didn't have to worry about how Emily was handling the finances. Well, until I did. One day I was able to get off work early. So anyway, it was a long work week and I was looking forward to the weekend. Emily was picking the kids up from school, so I figured it would be nice to surprise her as well. I worked long hours to provide for our family, so I knew sometimes she was probably feeling lonely in the house all by herself. When I got home, I noticed that there was an open letter on the counter. The envelope next to it had my wife's name on it. My wife obviously had already read it, but I picked it up out of curiosity. I was shocked. Our house was being foreclosed on. I was so shocked, as a matter of fact, that I looked again at the letter and address envelope to see if it was some type of scam. Not only was our house being foreclosed on, but we only had a week to get out. Which means my wife must have known about this for at least a couple months. As I sat there pondering what the hell was going on, my wife and kids walked through the front door. I turned around, the letter still in my hand. My wife's eyes widened as she looked at me. "Daddy's home early," my daughter called, running up to hug me. "I sure am. Hey, why don't you guys go play outside? Me and mommy need to talk," I said gently to my kids. I could tell my wife was getting nervous. Once the kids were outside, my wife broke down. She ended up telling me everything. Apparently, she had developed a pretty bad gambling addiction and ended up gambling most of our money away and all of our savings. Because of this, she had not been able to make payments on anything, including our house. When I confronted her about our savings account, which had thousands of dollars in it, she said that she gambled it away in hopes of making some money back. I was hurt, I was lost, confused, and most of all, I felt extremely betrayed. Why wouldn't she tell me? I was now on the receiving end of the consequences of her actions. A small part of me felt a little sadness for her, especially hearing her tell me that she felt ashamed, and she kept thinking that she could earn all the money back somehow and fix it just like she always did. But then I also felt pissed off and angry. Because, well, this was not just mismanaging money or spending too much, her actions affected her family, her husband and kids, and she didn't even think about that while gambling our life away. The next day, I took off of work to start making some arrangements. Under no circumstances would I let our kids be homeless or sleep in a car. At this point, I honestly did not even know if I wanted to stay married to Emily. I loved her to death, but I struggled with the idea of her willingly putting her kids in this situation and then trying to hide it. It just was not right. I called my parents and explained to them the situation. They were going to let us stay with them for the time being, so I felt a small sense of relief somewhere in this crazy situation. My parents were generally fond of Emily, but this whole situation put a sour taste in their mouth. I tried to beat around the bush and stay vague, but I had to be completely honest with them if I was gonna get myself and my family out of this mess. Except it was gonna be long and hard time before I got our family out of this. A few days after packing up everything we could, we had to leave a lot of furniture and stuff behind because it just wouldn't fit. I found out that Emily had taken out several loans in both of our names in order to try and make up for the money that she lost. While getting a loan did cross my mind at one point in order to start getting back on our feet and getting out of this, she did so without telling me. Once again, my trust in Emily was starting to crack and I wondered if there was even more BS she just was not telling me. Despite all of the craziness happening and how fast our lives had changed, my kids did not really seem to notice something was up. Well, besides moving and whatnot, I was more appreciative of my parents than ever because they really helped us with the kids during this time and provided them with some stability when our own lives seemed so unstable. I kept a happy face on for the sake of our kids, but man, it was a really rough and dark time. I actually did not even talk to Emily for several days. One night I decided to give my brother a call. He knew the basics of the situation because, well, my parents cannot keep their mouths shut, but I really wanted to talk to him about it myself and see if maybe he had any different perspectives. While I was still hot and heated, my brother said something that stood out to me. He basically said something along the lines of Emily needing professional help just like any addict. He said that addicts feel a lot of shame and that's probably why she did not say anything, and that she most likely had every intention of earning the money back or stopping altogether, but her addiction to gambling did not let her. After this phone call with my brother, something in me switched. I woke up the next morning and decided that we were gonna get out of this. I did not know if we could come out of this situation still married, but I was determined to get back on the right financial track. So then that morning I woke up and decided to start my research. I took notes on several different gambling rehabs and recovery groups as well as financial advisors in the area. I also started looking at marriage counselors because, as pissed off and angry and hurt as I was, I still loved Emily. But I was afraid that if we tried to fix the relationship on our own, then it would never be the same. Like I said, I was determined to fix this, so I wrote notes and laid everything out on a piece of paper for Emily about a week later. We were able to come up with a repayment plan for the loans that consolidated the payment into just one larger payment, which actually helped with the interest rate. Emily started attending a Gamblers Anonymous type of group and was committed to making things right in our marriage and family by also attending counseling with me. I was impressed by the strides we were making. Emily was being a lot more communicative and we were taking steps, even if only baby steps, to pay off the debt. And everything really seemed to be going great. Even my parents were surprised by the complete 360 Emily had done. She had owned up to everything too and stopped trying to hide how bad her problem was or made excuses. It made me even more excited for our future, just like when we got married. However, imagine my devastation when months down the line I found out Emily had been having an affair with a guy from her gambling support group. And it was not even Emily who told me, it was the man himself. Apparently he had been under the impression that we were separated. What the hell? When I confronted Emily about it, she broke down and admitted to the affair. I mean, how could she not? I was so devastated. And even more devastated when I knew that my marriage was over. I had already forgiven her for so much, only for her to turn around and betray me and her kids in the worst way possible. It honestly made me wonder if I really even knew Emily and fell in love with a false version of her. Over the next year after that, the divorce hearings and whatnot were brutal. Mind you, there was not that much to split between us since we lost pretty much everything to her gambling problem. However, I decided to file for full custody of the kids. My reason was not out of spite like she claimed, but because Emily now had a track record of making decisions that could affect our kids, and I was scared of the kids ending up in a bad situation under her custody. I was also nervous to file for full custody because, well, to be honest, the court usually favors the mom in these situations. However, because of the documentation proving Emily's gambling and other affairs, I was actually granted full custody. I was so ecstatic and I really was gonna bust my ass to provide a good quality of life and good childhood for my children. And although I was granted for full custody, we did agree on weekend visitations for Emily. She showed up for the first two but stopped showing up after that. As a matter of fact, we really don't even hear from Emily much anymore, which is really sad. I have a feeling she's probably deeper in her gambling addiction than ever before, but who knows, I ended up staying with my parents because they have helped me create a stable stable and loving environment for my kids, and for that I will forever be thankful for them. My divorce with Emily was painful. But through it all, I truly realized that you cannot want better for someone than they want for themselves. And here, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that is really a sad ending to the story, but I do wish OP and his children all the best, and maybe OP can find someone better than Emily in the future, someone that will support him and not cheat on him. Either way, let's continue with the next one. And the next one is a customer malicious compliance story. So I work for a visitor attraction in London. Generally, we are out on the floor answering questions, etc. We had a dedicated team that worked in a control room, usually supervisors or those that wanted to become supervisors. Normally 1 or 2 people in the control room, they were never even on the floor if they could help it. They watched the CCTV and controlled the breaks, lunches, etc. For instance, if a visitor sets off an alarm, they would call us and we would investigate the alarm. Management decided to pull the supervisors out onto the floor and train the floor personnel to be in the control room. Good idea on paper, but in practice, the supervisors didn't want to go on the floor and those on the floor didn't want to go into the control room. Some of us already worked in the control room as we relieved them for breaks, lunches, etc. Basically, if you were in the control room, you stayed in there. First training week went something like this. Someone that knew the control room training 3 or 4 of the floor people, needless to say that put us short-staffed on the floor and management had to go on the floor to cover. As for how hard could it be, it will only be a week and then I can go back to my cushy desk job. First day I was training 3 or 4 floor staff and management and supervisors were on the floor. Management told me treat them like normal floor staff. Okay, no problem. I asked everyone that I was training normal floor staff and we all got big smiles on our faces. Not even 10 minutes goes by and a radio call. Can one of you bring the keys for the front door so we can let the public in? It's a 5-minute walk from control to the front door. I radio one of the management on the floor. Come to control and pick up the keys and take to the front door. I then get a phone call saying, just have so and so bring them over. There's 4 of you in there. As per procedure, nobody is allowed out of the control room. Management take 5 minutes to get to control and then take the keys over to front door. So we are late opening. Next radio call. Which key is it? It's number XX. They open the doors, alarm goes off. Control, why did the alarm go off? You need to call control to let us know exactly when to take the alarm off. Procedure, all of this is written down. Procedures must be followed. Now that the public is in, alarms start going off for various reasons. The public loves going through doors that say, door is alarmed, normal stuff. I start radio calls to management on the floor saying, Charlie 3 go to door X, Charlie 3 go to door X, etc. Delta 4 relieve Charlie 3 for their lunch. Lunchtime I get phone calls from people who haven't been relieved for their lunch on time. Management has not figured out that travel time between your post and the break area is not included in your lunch/break. If you have an hour lunch and it takes you 10 minutes walking time to get there, then basically your lunch is 40 minutes, 10 minutes to go from your post to break room and 10 minutes to go back to post. Normal control room staff knew this and would start lunches early to give everyone as much as possible a full lunch. More radio calls like, Charlie 3 can you check the toilet? Report of water on the floor. Charlie 3 can you go to X? Visitor wants to use a voucher. Actually, Charlie 3 go to door X, but I'm with the visitor. Doors take priority, Charlie 3. For the rest of the day we ran management like crazy. Everything in the procedures was adhered to. Count the empty spaces in the car park, check locks on the emergency gates, check toilets, men's and women's, to see if they need to be refilled with toilet paper. Look for lights out, fill in your task book, etc. Next day, needless to say, I was not in the control room. Did not matter, the tone was set. It didn't matter who was in there, the rest of the week went by the same. Everyone that followed me ran management nuts. Management, to their credit, changed some things after that. Black sneakers can now be worn, more break rooms closer to post have been opened, procedures have been loosened up. Control people are back in control and floor people are on the floor. Everyone is now trained in the control room, but they only have to work if they want. Still, it was a glorious week. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. Next time you think that you have the worst mother-in-law in the world for making a snarky comment over Christmas dinner, you can remember this story of how my mother-in-law got me arrested and almost sent to prison for years. There is a ton to unpack with this story, so I'm just going to get started and fill in the blanks for background when needed. My uncle had passed away, and since he had no children of his own, he passed down his house to me. At the time, I did not know that my mother-in-law was getting fake documents to say that she was the one that inherited and owned the house. I did not have a house yet, and this was a perfect place to move in with my wife. A couple months before this whole thing started, she had gotten into a car accident and been in the hospital. She was unconscious in a coma due to some brain trauma from the crash, and they wanted her to stay in this coma until she was healed. I'm not a doctor, but if one is reading this, maybe you can leave a comment explaining it. This was one reason that my mother-in-law and I were around each other all the time. I already did not like her, but for the sake of my wife, I was trying my best to put up with her. I knew she hated me and made it clear before I married my wife that she did not want her daughter to marry me and instead marry somebody rich. I was not expecting the police to come barging into my house screaming at me to get on the ground and being cuffed though. Then them walking in with a gun and telling me that I was under arrest for having it. For those that don't know, I live in Brunei and it is 100% illegal to own a gun here. There is no grey area. The thing is that I never had a gun, but they didn't believe me when I said that I had no idea where it came from. When I found out the rest of my charges, I found out that not only was I being arrested for having the gun, but also trespassing and stealing the house from the proper owner. Again, they did not listen when I said I was the owner, because now to them I was just a gun-owning criminal. That was when I found out that my mother-in-law apparently had papers saying that she was the true owner of my property. With my wife in a coma, I did not have anybody to help me, so it was just my word against hers. They seemed to want to believe her, and I was terrified that I was going to end up in jail for potentially years when I had not done anything wrong. I was lucky enough that they were not going to keep me in jail while they worked everything out and instead released me to go get a lawyer and wait for a day in court to decide my punishment. I couldn't go back home because I found mother-in-law living in it and my stuff had been thrown outside for trash. I was so angry and trying to find some way to prove that it was my house and that I did not own a gun. I just want to say that I'm not a rich man and I'm not a highly educated man either. This combination meant that it was likely that I was going to end up in jail. The thing is that I'm still a smart man and knew that I could find something to prove that I was innocent. One thing that I did know is that to get a gun here, you basically have to go and smuggle it in from a neighboring country. I won't say where for obvious reasons, but basically I had to show that I had not traveled there. On top of that, I had to try and open an investigation against my mother-in-law. While I did not have much money, I was lucky enough that one of my uncle's friends was a lawyer and willing to help me out for free as a favor. We were able to open a dispute that would check two different things. It would check to see my mother-in-law's travel history to see if she had been to the country where she could get a gun. Also, we would need to get fingerprint samples of the gun to show that I had never touched it and mother-in-law probably had since she was too cocky to be careful. I was glad about that because it did delay my processing of going to jail once they found out, and she indeed did recently travel to that country for a very short period of time. That plus prints coming up for her and not me now caused the police to start to believe the story that I was telling them instead. I had not been able to show them documents that proved I owned the house because they were in the house that I was not allowed in. It was like being stuck in an endless loop that I couldn't find a way out. Instead, they looked into the history of the past owner, which was my uncle. How it showed he had no connection with mother-in-law and it would not have made any sense for her to be the one to inherit the house. Finally, the police allowed me to enter my own house supervised to show them where the papers were. Luckily, mother-in-law did not know where I kept them and they avoided getting thrown out. I will say this much, her documents looked extremely real and I have a feeling it was another thing she got done in the other country. The police were finally willing to drop the charges against me and instead turned them onto my mother-in-law. While owning a gun is illegal, getting caught smuggling one into the country is way worse. It makes sense because they want to catch people actually doing it, not just the people in Brunei buying them illegally. That was not everything though, because she had committed a couple of other crimes that are taken seriously here. She had forged official documents and that alone carried a sentence of additional jail time. Then it came down to her trying to frame me for owning a gun and getting me sent to jail, as well as throwing out my property. After wasting so much police time with falsely trying to get me arrested, they had no sympathy for my mother-in-law at all. They charged her for everything and I sued her to give me the money to replace my things. That meant she did not have money for a good lawyer and she was going to end up doing jail time here. I was glad because I was finally able to move back into my home after having to jump around living with a bunch of people a couple days at a time. Even at one point I ended up in a shelter because I had nowhere else to go. The only thing that I don't know is how I'm going to explain this whole thing to my wife when she wakes up. I don't think that she ever saw the evil side of her mother, and I don't want to get her upset while she is still recovering. For her sake, I honestly would have wished that my mother-in-law could have just hated me without making things go this far and trying to steal my property. I did not mind that she hated me because I could handle that alone, but I was not going to let her get away with sending me to jail. Since that first day I randomly get nervous around police, thinking that I will once again get arrested for something that I didn't do. I just hope one day my life can get back to some version of normal. The moral of the story is that if you have a horrible mother-in-law, never think that she can do something this low. It happened to me and I didn't think she would ever do this either. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.